here and comes with a wealth of knowledge for the industry. So welcome, Christian.
Thank you, Joe, and apologies once again for the little technical glitch, but the show is on the road. So I'm glad that I'm here. It's an absolute privilege to be able to share with all the finalists that have dialed in to give them a few hints and tips in terms of what they can expect, how they can prepare for the finalist sessions. And so hopefully by the end of this, they'll be in a better position to know what direction to sort of take there and to really put their best foot forward to impress upon the judges over the next few weeks when the finalist sessions commence.
And, you know, I just want to say we should definitely heed the advice Christian gives us today, because he is a professional with over 25 years experience in sales, marketing, management and customer service across a whole range of industries, including our very own travel industry. And back in 2009, Christian led the marketing team of a major international touring company who actually won Best Tour Operator.
So yes, it's a decade ago, had the privilege to win. So I certainly know what it's like to wait in anticipation, to have, you know, the name, called up on stage, all the nerves, but all the excitement that goes through it as well. And hopefully, you know, I can channel some of that from a decade ago there to share with you some of the things that may very well put you in the same position that I was in some time ago.
Well, thank you again for joining us, Christian.
Pleasure to be here.
So the thing that together we would just like to say to you all is congratulations on being a finalist. It is no small feat getting to this stage.
Yeah, I'd certainly echo what Joe says there. You know, independently and having the privilege and the opportunity to be involved in a range of different travel, tourism, cruise industry awards, you know, I can certainly say that the AFTA NTIAs is second to none. It really is a privilege to even just make it as a finalist, but to become a winner, I mean, that certainly is a badge of honor, something that certainly can help in terms of career development and something that employers really do look for in terms of the accolades and the achievements that you have made there. So feel proud that you're finalists already. And for those that do become winners, that's something really to relish in.
So we know it takes a lot of time to put together your finalist presentation, and many of you are traveling from across the country to deliver either a 30 or 40-minute presentation. And so today we want to make sure that you are equipped with all the information that you have to prepare effectively. We want to help you understand and interpret the criteria accurately. And then also Christian's going to give us some insights into what are the judges looking for. And we're also going to branch off into some presentation tips and tricks that the judges have fed back to us over the years that we're going to give back to you on how your presentation delivery has an impact on your scores. And of course, we're going to demonstrate through this process that yes, in fact, the NTIA process is ethical, is fair, and beyond reproach. The NTIA Awards is definitely not possible without a myriad of sponsors, and here is an illustration of all those that bring the NTIAs to fruition on Saturday the 20th of July, which is the gala dinner. It's no small feat, and it just requires truly a helping of companies from across the industry.
I think that this particular slide speaks to your former point, Joe, about the NTIA process being ethical and above board, and all the checks and balances are in place, particularly from a judging perspective, because you see all these brands and all these sponsors here, they're hanging their association with AFTA and the NTIAs, you know, based on the credibility that the awards actually have.
Definitely. So just so we all know when the gala dinner is, it's coming up really soon, much to Belle and my dismay, we frantically prepare, but it's on Saturday the 20th of July. It is at the International Convention Centre where we've had it for the last 2 years. We've finally found a venue that can cater for 1,300 of travel industry friends with leg room, and a venue where there's no pillars, with everybody's got fantastic line of sight. It has state-of-the-art lighting and sound, and 5-star dining. So we're really pleased to be there again. And
I'll certainly add to that. For those that have not been to an NTIA previously, or have not been to an evening function or event at the ICC Sydney, first impressions are absolutely amazing. From the welcome entry through to entering into the grand ballroom there, it just is absolutely spectacular. The attention to detail is fantastic, and you just can't help but get swept up in the moment that night is.
So if you're able to come, we always set tickets aside for our finalists first and foremost, and make sure that they have a seat in the room. And you will have received an email from AFTA asking you to request your tickets now. If you haven't had a chance to do this, you can do it via a link on the AFTA website. So you just go in and request how many tickets you like. They're tables of 10, but of course you can buy single tickets if you like, or grab a best friend or a partner and bring them along too. I just would like to touch on the NTIA process itself and just recap the 2 ways that individuals or businesses may become a winner. To ensure the integrity of the awards, we're always improving our processes, and so there has been some change over the last few years. The first way I'm going to share with you is a way that has remained, in fact, unchanged over the years, and that's through a voted process. So industry always have their say and always nominate industry. So travel agents nominate suppliers in supplier categories, and vice versa. Suppliers will nominate travel agents in travel agent categories. For this particular process, once we've announced nominees, we go into open voting, where it's the industry votes that will determine who the winner is in that category. And the businesses with the 5 highest scores are the ones that become finalists, and the ones that we published the other week through our various media partners. So that's one way to become a winner. The second way is through a submission process. So again, industry nominate industry, and then if you are to accept your nomination, you've been asked to complete a round 1 submission. Now these submissions go off to independent master university lecturers, and they actually score the answers against the criteria. And it's the individuals or businesses with the 5 highest scores that become the finalists, and it's those finalists that we then invite to judging at the Qantas campus. And because you guys are on the webinar, you would have all done a submission. And after the judging, we combined the judges' presentation scores with the round 1 submission scores to determine the winner. We found this to be a much fairer process. The decision on who wins isn't left to just the three or 2 judges in the room, but in fact, it's a combination of the written submission and the presentation delivery. So the 2 processes together determine the winner and are both equally important. Is that clear? Anything you want to add, Christian?
Well, I would say that this again just speaks to how rigorous the process is, both in terms of assessing your capabilities, but then also the various hoops that you need to jump through in order to become a winner. It's not an easy thing to achieve. You do have to certainly work at it, but boy, oh boy, if you are up on stage as a winner, that's when it's a real emotional high there, because you just know how far you've had to go in order to claim that top spot.
And I do hope that each of you have started working on your presentation, because it's not long away. I've had a few questions about whether the questions are for the judges' presentation. These questions are in the same entrant guidelines document where the questions were for the round 1 submission. So the entire process for each of the categories is all in the one document, and it's all available on the AFTA website, or if you need it, you can email me and I can point you to the right page. But really read and understand this document, because we pretty much tell you what we're looking for. And I'm going to hand over to Christian now, who will go into some of the more specific details.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Let's take a little look at what you're seeing now up on screen. Most of this will be quite self-evident, but I think it's perhaps important nonetheless just to go through it all, to clear up any sort of misunderstanding, or to give you guys an opportunity to question some of these things via the webinar process here, and then we can respond at the end of the webinar. But without further ado, let's hit it from the top then. So it's a pretty good fundamental that you need to read and understand each question. You've got a little bit of time in advance, so if you don't necessarily understand, you've got time now to ask, to query, to qualify, and that all, I guess, speaks to the preparation that you're willing to put in to put your best foot forward. The second point is something that I'd like to really labor upon, to answer all the questions asked, and specifically to answer them in the order they are asked. Now, there's often 2 or 3 judges in the room, and, we are looking at all the finalists, they're back to back to back to back, and those that really do stand out are those that really follow the process and follow the order. And what it does for us as judges is it means that we're not having to struggle to ask ourselves the questions, did they answer this question? They might have answered this question here. If it's a little bit all over the place, we could potentially lose track. However, if you're a finalist and your flow is such that you're just, going from the first to the second to the third and following things sequentially, well, then it's one less thing that we need to struggle to comprehend, and we can just find ourselves getting into your presentation, enjoying it, and, really looking at how you're hitting upon all the key criteria. So to that end, really do try and stick to the order by which, the criteria is laid out. So that's my tip on that one there. A little bit of admin, number each answer according to entrant guidelines. It just helps us to sort of keep track of where you are across your 30 to 40 minute presentation. You're judged on the presentation given. So handouts are fine, but that they may help us. We may, mark notes on the particular handouts just so that we can sort of, come back and reconvene and regroup on some of the things that might have been said. But really, what it's about is you, how you present, not necessarily the collateral that you bring in, the paperwork that you bring in. Sure, that's all fine, but, we're not really going to spend too much time, looking at that, let alone assessing it. It's about you and your time on stage. Certainly, if you are confident in using technology, if you are confident that, a video piece that you've got adds value to your presentation, then by all means use it. But the onus is on you to ensure that it flows really well, that it syncs really well, that the interplay between you toggling between speaking, a slide, and a video, is effortless. But so really just think, okay, if you're going to play a 1-minute video or a 2-minute video, that's coming out of your time, and it really needs to add value to the overall presentation. So consider whether and how essential video is. It doesn't always have to be there, but if you think that it is going to give you an advantage, just make sure that it works and that there are no technical hiccups, because if there are, it does come out of your overall time. And that perhaps lends itself to the last point here, which is it's your responsibility to check. So, preparation, preparation, preparation. So on to the next lot of recommendations that we can make. We will ask questions if need be. So let's say that you utilize your 30 minutes or your 40 minutes. If you've nailed all the criteria, then, you know, don't feel bad that if the judges don't have any questions at the end of your presentation. It means that chances are you've satisfied us sufficiently that we don't have any further questions. We typically will try and keep questions to the end only if we need to ask them, and only if it's within your allotted time frame. What we don't want to do is give anyone any additional advantages and give them a couple of minutes Q&A at the end, particularly if they've utilized all of their 30 to 40 minutes. So just be warned that, you know, judges not asking questions is not necessarily a bad thing. If we should choose to do so, it will most likely come at the end of your presentation and only if there's time to spare. Next point here is that you need to feel entirely confident that we are bound by a non-disclosure agreement. So anything that you choose to share and to say about, you know, yourself or about your business, whether it is something about percentage growth or new market opportunities or particular achievements that have given you, you know, competitive advantages in the marketplace, particular wins or bids that are out there, all of that is going to be contained within the walls in which, you know, your presentation takes place. So we're not going to gossip, we're not going to talk about it afterwards. It's purely there and delivered during your time, and then it's forgotten about after our marks are done afterwards. So feel confident to speak about things that you think really highlight and put your best foot forward, because once it's done and dusted, you know, the judges no longer, you know, chat or talk about it outside of the judging process. Joe, you've got a tip there about sensitive information. You know, yes, certainly you don't have to mention financial figures. Some people representing brands choose to do so, and that's absolutely fine. It's not essential. If you want to talk about, you know, growth, be it sales growth or market share or something like that, you can certainly illustrate those points using percentages. But here's a tip. What I would say is that, let's say that you've had a massive amount of growth, and that looks like in percentage terms, you know, 200% growth on the prior year. If it's off a low base, you should have a bit of humility to sort of say that, because sometimes the judges will say, yeah, 200%, you know, growth. I bet that's off a small base. So just qualify that. Have a bit of humility. Say, you know, it's a new product. You know, in the second year, it's 200% growth, but it is off a small growth. But what it does illustrate is that the market is growing, is that the product, you know, fits the market, and perhaps qualify that. I think that really lends credibility. Joe, did you want to jump in and say something about that?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I think on the point of complete confidence in the process, not even myself or Sue, who will be at judging to greet you, see any of the presentation or material. We are simply responsible for adding together the marks that the judges give you and combining it with the round one scores. So we're not even privy to the information that's shared, and we're completely outside the room when the judge is discussing the presentation as well.
Terrific. And then the final point here is practice. And I'll use a little bit of an Arnold Schwarzenegger analogy here. So pardon the sporting metaphor, but maybe one or two of you may have read his autobiography. But long story short, at the end of his biography, he gives certain hints and tips as to what he thinks, you know, has contributed to his success, whether that's been in bodybuilding. He rose to the top, whether that's been in acting, you know, his films have grossed billions of dollars, or whether it's been in politics. You know, he achieved, you know, the highest position he could possibly achieve in America, being a foreign citizen. And that was repetition, repetition, repetition. You know, he didn't get good straight off the bat. He had to practice and practice and practice. And I think that really is the key. The more sweat that you put into it in advance, the better you're going to be. If you can get it to the point that it is second nature, then boy, you really will have a competitive advantage. And I think that confidence will really show and impress upon the judges when it comes time to perform.
And I think I'll add to that. I don't know if you guys have ever, you've been to conferences before or seminars, and there's a presenter at the front, and you think to themselves, wow, they're so natural and it just flows off. And, that presenter's really not talking off the cuff. That presenter has practiced, rehearsed, and really thought about their content. And it really does stand out for the judges whether something is practiced and the content known. And even if you're nervous, if you're well practiced, the content will still come across really, really well.
Yeah, I'll add to what Joe was saying there. It's okay to be nervous. Many of us have actually been on your side. We have been judged ourselves. And nerves are a natural thing, but conquer them. And one way you can conquer them is through practicing. So, talk in front of a mirror, talk to your partner or significant other, get your colleagues around and pitch them and get them to give you some really honest and brutal feedback. Listen to that feedback and then maybe pivot, where you think that feedback can actually help and improve upon your particular presentation.
Yeah, and ask them questions like, did my presentation flow? Was my content clear? Did you understand the main points that I was delivering? Because sometimes when we practice the presentation in our head, it's very different to how it's received by an audience. So, as Christian says, practice for friends and relatives, grab a colleague and practice for them, practice in front of the mirror. It will really do you wonders. Now, I have a question for you, Christian.
Okay.
For company categories,
yep,
what's your opinion on bringing one or two presenters?
That's a really good question. So the answer is it depends. And some of it really comes down to just how well you practice and how much you think, two people presenting is going to complement each other, is going to improve the overall performance and really deliver upon the criteria without there being a distraction. So certainly over the years, I've seen some examples of where there just has not been some great interplay between two presenters. It becomes a little bit disjointed, there's a little bit of fumbling around, and that all is a distraction. And, we tend to, and whilst, you are graded upon, your presentation, so there are points to be awarded, we may not be as generous if the overall of the flow of the presentation is not in sync. However, if you've got two colleagues that, just really gel and they can deliver a really solid 1-2 punch, then two presenters are okay. You just simply need to ensure that there is this seamless handover from one presenter to the next. And then if you think that that's what's going to give you an advantage, by all means, put your best foot forward.
Yeah, great. So just want to help get everybody familiar with what a room layout may look like. We're really fortunate to be having the judging at the Qantas campus because they have state-of-the-art facilities. It's enabled us to now have videos and sound in the presentations. We've got a great presentation screen, which is always at the front of the room. And in most cases, the three judges will sit opposite the finalists at a table. And Christian, do you have a preference on whether the finalists should be sitting or standing?
That really is up to the individual. How comfortable do they feel? We have certainly awarded, top marks to those that have seated. And it's not because they are sitting down, it's because they nail all the key criteria. They just felt more comfortable sitting opposite us and talking to us, and it was more like a conversation. But certainly others do choose to stand, and I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, particularly if there's a little bit of light pacing up and down. It means that you're keeping the judge's attention because we'll be following you with our eyes. And, we'll have to sort of, ebb and flow with our head just to sort of, keep up to where you are in the presentation there. So it holds our concentration, which is certainly something that you want to achieve. But with everything, if there is nervous pacing, if there is a little bit too much fumbling around there, that could become a distraction. So whilst there is no preference for whether it's better to be seated or to be standing, I think that comes down to the individual and what they're comfortable with. Just ensure that overarching, you are meeting all that key criteria, and then doing something that you feel is going to be natural with how you want to get across your particular presentation.
And on that, I sometimes get questions around notes. It's okay to have written notes that you talk to, but again, if you've practiced it and know what's on your notes, you'll be using your notes as a prompter rather than reading with your head down. And we'll go into some presentation tips soon, that was a tongue twister, on how delivery is really important for impressions. I just want to touch base on the criteria scoring because it's a big portion of how you get your marks. The judges have a criteria sheet in front of them, and they mark on this criteria sheet how well you've answered each of the questions. The scoring has been structured on a Rubik scoring matrix. From 0, the person didn't answer the question, right through to they demonstrated full knowledge of the question and addressed all the elements successfully. If you make a statement, the judges want to see examples to substantiate those comments. So it's about providing meaty evidence. Again, answer all the questions because unfortunately, if you miss a question, we can't score you, or the judges can't score you for that question. All questions are evenly weighted, even the first question, which is just tell us about your business. Some people fall into a trap of feeling that they need to spend a lot of time on question 1. If you provide a really solid overview of your business, your unique selling points, you can easily score a 4 without spending 15 minutes on that question. Answer it and move on to ensure that you can adequately answer the questions towards the end of the criteria.
So I'll just jump in on that. Bit of a tip for the finalists. Some judges may elect to take notes as you're presenting, and they might score particular criteria during your presentation. Other judges may elect to do all the scoring at the end. So there may be differentiation amongst the judges as your presentation is going on. So fear not if you see one judge, scribbling a few notes versus another judge that is solely focused on yourself. That's just to explain that there might be some differences in the overall style by which the judges record, their notes, make their observations and things like that.
That's a good point. And to add to that, assume no prior knowledge. The judges don't see your round 1 submission answers. They don't see it, they have no knowledge. So don't go into the presentations assuming that they've read it or they know about your business. Assume a blank canvas is probably the tip that I'd give you there.
Yeah, I'd agree with what Joe says. The key is balance. So whilst you might feel more comfortable talking about home ground advantage, i.e. the company that you work for, just be cognizant that there is a whole bunch of other criteria to come as well. So again, practice and a particular amount of time per individual criteria.
Now, whilst most marks go towards answering the criteria, there is a large portion of the presentation where the scores are gained through your presentation delivery. So I've got here that 20 marks will be awarded to the presentation delivery. Now that is quite a lot of marks. And the judges are looking at your presentation skills. Was it delivered with a clear and auditable voice? Was the presentation well structured, organized and succinct? You know, were there appropriate visual aids? And to Christian's point, if you put in a presentation that has no relevance or doesn't help substantiate what you're talking about, you won't get marked for that. In fact, it could work against you. And one thing I just want to say is it's really important to nail the intro slide. You know, too often speakers miss opportunities to make a really positive first impression with a sloppy intro slide. So your slides need to remind the judges of who you are and what you're going to talk about. And just a couple of tips on presentation design. So firstly, you may be part of a company and you may need to use the company's design, and that's okay. But if you have creativity to do your own, just make sure that all the designs are consistent from each of the pages. Be careful of your background color. Be careful of the size and type of your font, because poor choices can actually make it difficult for the judges to read. It's a good idea to use your logo or a symbol on each of the slides. That just is a constant reminder of the brand or company that you work for. Remember, the slides are to help back you up, help back up what you're saying. So keep them simple, keep them to 4 to 6 bullet points. Too much text can clutter a slide and actually be distracting for the judges. Find that balance between text and imagery. If you're going to use animation, again, make it meaningful. And when it comes to data, think carefully about what the judges might want to see. And remember that people can only remember 3 key points, so don't overly clutter the slide with lots of stats. And again, we don't expect you to divulge financial data. If you want to illustrate a point, it's okay to use percentages. But again, in all of this, remember the focus is to answer the criteria, and the slides are to help you articulate the answering of that criteria.
Yes, I'd certainly agree with Joe on that. And if you're going to use images within your PowerPoint presentation, just to ensure that they're high resolution images. There's nothing worse than a really blurry image that distracts us, or that we fail to sort of see what the detail might be there. So when using images, go for high resolution. And a little tip, certainly on the bullet point side of things, what you're really going for is more thriller, less filler. So avoid, all those bullet points, and as Joe said, use them thoughtfully as a prompt to tell the story, rather than the story in itself.
Great. Now, I would just like to spend a few minutes talking about presentation skills, because over the years that I've done the coordination of the judging, I'll have many judges say to me, wow, that guy's content was fantastic, if only he delivered it in a better way. And so here's a couple of tips that you might like to take on board. Now, the first thing is body language. And it's really important to focus on your body language, because your body sends a message to the audience. And communication is made up of both verbal and non-verbal cues. And in fact, one study I read revealed that the message someone receives is only made up of 7% of the words that we use. The rest, the 93% that remains, actually comes from non-verbal cues. So that's facial expressions and body language, and then that's also tone of voice. So here are a couple of tips, and the first one is that first impressions are absolutely critical. And did you know that within 7 seconds of meeting someone, they will have judged your trustworthiness, your competence, your warmth, and your confidence? And no doubt, Christian, the judges can certainly tell if someone's feeling confident. Yes,
absolutely. So, we have had instances where people come in and they're quite worked up, they're a little bit flustered, and they're apologetic right off the bat. There might be some circumstances to that, but is that the first impression that you want to make? Because isn't it about getting off on the right sort of footing to begin with?
Yeah. So we really encourage you to arrive 15 to 20 minutes earlier. When you arrive, you will go to the front of house reception at Qantas and say that you're here for judging, then myself or Sue will come and get you, and we'll actually take you to a waiting room, which will enable you to get your thoughts together. And so if you do make most of that room, it'll enable you to be in the best frame of mind. People can pick up your attitude instantly, so it's definitely worth thinking about what type of attitude you want to embody. If you're nervous and you don't want to be there and you're a bit begrudged about having to fly from Perth for this presentation because your boss made you, it's going to come across the judges, and you've probably no point in even coming. So really think about the energy that you want to portray, because people feed off positive energy. And posture on that note is really important. You know, an erect posture, your shoulders back and your head held high, it just makes you look more confident.
Yes, I'll certainly add to that. And that's a consideration around whether you do want to sit at a seat or whether you're standing up presenting. You'll have to think about that, you know, because if you're seated behind a desk, and as we said, that's absolutely fine, you do want to sit straight back, shoulders back, and all that sort of stuff there to give the impression, even though that there is a table in between, you know, the judges and yourself, that there is a degree of confidence, you know, going on. If you are standing up, then yes, of course, you know, the pacing back and forth, you know, how you project your voice, you know, comes out a little bit differently standing compared to when you are seated as well. So they're little, I guess, you know, behavioral things you'll need to think about going into the actual finalist sessions. And
definitely, if you're sitting, make sure your 2 feet are still firmly on the ground and your back's erect and your hands are visible, because hidden hands are often perceived as not trustworthy. The next thing is to make sure that you smile. A smile is a welcome, it's inviting, and it says I'm friendly and approachable. So make sure you smile when you greet the judges. And also, eye contact is really important. Looking at someone's eye transmits energy and indicates openness. And so every time you meet someone, practice trying to remember what color their eye is, and that will make sure that you hold their gaze long enough for them to notice. Now, when making a first impression, make sure you shake their hand. One research I read actually said that people are twice as more likely to remember you if you shake their hand. It makes you appear more open and friendly and gets the relationship off to a good start. But I just want to say, beware of your type of handshake, because people can judge you based on the handshake that you do give. You know, if you have a weak handshake, it's a mark of someone who's timid and not confident. If you're a bone crusher, it gives the impression of someone that's overbearing and insensitive and can put people off guard, make them feel uncomfortable. And if you shake someone's hand and your arm is really outstretched, creating distance between you and that other person, it's evaluated as distrust or unfriendliness. So I encourage you, the next time you greet someone for a business meeting, pay close attention to the type of handshake that you give and also that you receive, and start to think, well, how am I interpreting this handshake based on what someone's given me, and how do I want to be perceived when I go to judging? In terms of giving open body language, confident gestures is really important. So as Christian talked about earlier, it's good to move around the room, and research has actually shown that using our hands can actually power up our thinking. So if you've ever been on a phone call before and you found yourself talking using your hands when there's actually no one there to see your hands being moved, it's because it's a way that it powers up our thinking, and in fact can build trust and credibility. If your hands remain stiff by your side, you can be seen as unsure or unwelcoming. If they're hidden under the table, it could be perceived that you've got something to hide. And you want to avoid negative gestures like pulling at your collar, fiddling with jewelry, playing with hair, because again, these gestures can make you seem unprepared, which might be the complete opposite of what you are and want to portray. And again, if you're feeling uncertain or nervous, that will be portrayed in your body language. And vice versa, if you walk in with shoulders upright, head up, but you are nervous, the way you stand can actually help reverse how you feel. So think about that. I just want to touch on feet as well. Feet's really important. Often when people are delivering presentations or having a conversation with someone, where your feet point actually indicates where you want to go. So if you're talking to the judges, but your feet are pointed away and your body slightly turned, it could indicate to the judges, I'm really nervous and I want to get out of here. So make sure you square up your body and you face the judges that you're talking to so that you're perceived as confident. And then just finally, I want to touch on tone of voice and rate of speech. In order to be perceived as confident, it's really important to lower the tone of voice. It's also really important to think about the way that you end sentences. There's a thing called inflection, and when we say a comment or a statement and we inflect on the end, it can be perceived as untrustworthy or even the fact that you're not sure about what you're saying. So if I was to say something like, we achieved a growth of 7% compared to we achieved a growth of 7%. So which one seems more trustworthy and more confident in the data that you're sharing?
I might just jump in there, Joe, whilst you're on the topic of tone of voice and rate of speech. Sometimes, you know, people get a little bit nervous heading into a presentation. And, you know, that's manifested in, you know, a lack of saliva in their mouth and they get a little bit clammy. And you hear, you know, these sort of noises as they speak. So there are a few tips that you can do to just ensure that there is enough fluidity within, you know, your voice and saliva within your mouth. Maybe avoid a bit of coffee beforehand, you know, brush your teeth, gargle, chew some gum, just basically to get the sort of juices flowing, if I can use that phrase there, because then that way you're less likely to trip up on your tongue. There's a little bit more, as I said, you know, fluid in your voice and in your mouth there to enable the enunciation and pronunciation of words just that little bit better there. So a little tip there that you might want to consider dental hygiene before you present.
No. And again, if you are nervous, tension is going to restrict your breathing, which restricts the airflow past your larynx, and therefore will affect the pitch of your voice. So in the room that we give you to wait in, use that time to take deep breaths and really let the air flow and bring down the nerves so that when you go into the room, you can talk with clarity and confidence and in a lower tone. And of course, rate of speech. The judges might not know much about your business. They're trying to follow the criteria. They're trying to learn about your business. They're trying to, or you as an individual, your career history. And they're trying to hear, interpret, digest, and mark. So if you talk really fast, you may miss points, or you may talk so fast the judges miss a point that you're talking about. So really pay attention to how fast you speak in order to maximize your scoring opportunities.
I think that's a really good point. And I'll also add that you might run the risk of under-explaining a particular point because you just breeze through that. But maybe that point is actually quite significant. Maybe it illustrates you know, a particular competency or a particular win, something within the criteria that highlights, you know, an achievement. And that's something that you probably do want to labor upon. And so sometimes effective presentations can actually double up on that particular point just to really reinforce to the judges that, you know, that this is something that they need to pay particular attention to.
Yeah, great point. So let's just summarize the top tips.
Okay, well, refer to the criteria and the questions. I don't want to underestimate that. You know, it's have to do a terrific job at laying out what the expectations are that the judges are looking for. So for those of you that have dialed in today, you're already at a competitive advantage. You are preparing yourself. You're hearing, I guess, the inside tips as to what's going to make your presentation successful. But most importantly, you know, read the criteria and make sure that you speak to and answer the specific questions.
Great. And just remember, answer them in the order that they're asked. And the handouts that you'll give the judges is not reading material. So in many cases, people ask me what they should do here. You can simply print out a copy of your presentation if you wish. In previous years, we've always asked for 3 copies. This year, we've asked for just 1 copy. That's totally fine. So don't spend a huge amount of time creating an additional amount of work for the judges to read. That they won't be able to look at it.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Joe said there. I mean, if you're from a publicly listed company, there's no need to bring in your annual report. If you're from a private company, but you put together some sort of annual report, there's no need to bring that in. We're not assessing that. So it's nice, it might look fancy, but you're not going to be judged on that.
And make sure you practice and ensure that you can answer all of the questions in the allotted time.
And actually, just on that particular point, we will cut it at the 30 or 40-minute mark, depending upon the time allotted for your respective presentation. We have to be fair to absolutely every finalist. We do stick to a pretty rigid schedule, and so therefore, if you've only answered 7 of the 8 questions and you've already hit the 30-minute mark, then we will cut it, and unfortunately then you'll lose that opportunity to earn marks for the missed criteria.
Great point. And again, you're not penalised for finishing earlier, but I will ask you, have you answered all of the questions with enough detail if you do finish early? The judging schedule is on the website, so you can jump on and just clarify what days all the categories are being judged, but of course each of you has received your judging time and day. Judging is taking place at the Qantas campus in Mascot once again. It's really easy to get there. So you've got, I guess, 2 key options. From domestic airport, you can catch a train to Mascot station, and it's a really easy 250-metre walk to the campus. Alternatively, you could catch a cab or an Uber, and it's probably between a 5 and 10-minute drive at best, depending on the traffic. When you enter the main building, please go to see the Qantas reception, and they will let us know that you've arrived, and we will come and get you and take you to a room where you can gather your thoughts. You must bring photo ID to access the Qantas campus. If you don't, it's not our responsibility, and you may not be allowed into the building to do your presentation. I mentioned this before, but what to expect? Please make sure you arrive at least 15 to 20 minutes before your presentation time. You will receive a NTIA USB stick, which we would like you to bring your finalist presentation on. These were sent out in the mail yesterday, so you should receive it before judging. But if the worst case happens and it doesn't arrive, we've all got USB sticks, so just grab a USB stick that you've got lying around the home or office, and it is okay to use that. Please read the entrant guidelines and make sure that your presentation format is in a format that can be read by our Microsoft computers. So it needs to be PowerPoint. Our preference for slides is the 6:9, which is the wide version. You can do the smaller size, but because we have beautiful big screens at the Qantas campus, you can have a 6:9, it works beautifully. During the day, it's really hectic, which is why we asked you to arrive on time. There are 2 judging sessions running simultaneously. So at any one time, we have anywhere between 4 and 6 judges on site in the 2 respective rooms. Please don't be shocked when you arrive and we ask to take a photo of you. We do this because we like to use the headshots to recognise finalists at the gala dinner. So they are a professional photo that's taken and put on the on-screen presentation, and I assure you, you'll all look beautiful. We'll announce winners at the NTIA Gala dinner and provide judges feedback following the gala dinner. So it's a big task to send out around 100 odd feedback forms. So it'll probably take 2 weeks after NTIA, but you'll start receiving those.
And on the night itself, for the winners, after you're announced up on stage and you've delivered your thank you speeches, you'll then be ushered out to the media wall, where we'll take some official photographs with yourself and the sponsor of your respective category. And then we'll take a moment to bring you across to do a backstage interview on camera with Travel Daily and Travel Bulletin. We'll put together a little highlights video package that is available to finalists if they want a keepsake from the night there. So that typically, I guess, is a bit of an order of play after you come off on stage.
Fantastic. And finally, before we see if there's any questions, I just want to say that all finalists have access to the finalist logo. You would have received this in a recent EDM that went out about tickets being available, but if you haven't and you need it, please just contact ntia@after.com.au and we'll send it to you. You will have all received your travel arrangements for those that are travelling interstate, but if not, please contact Sue. Finalist trophies are sponsored by Tramada, and these are given to finalists at the gala dinner. So if you're not attending, please let us know so that we can post these to you. As I mentioned, gala dinner tickets are on sale, but they're selling fast, so please jump online and request tickets for the gala dinner, which will be Saturday the 20th of July, starting from 5 p.m. And we will be asking that all guest names and dietaries are provided late June and very early July. So that sums up the bulk of the webinar. So let's just see if anybody has any questions or wants us to further explain anything that we've said today. Hopefully we've done a great job and there's no questions. And again, really sorry for the technical issue, which has had us running 5 minutes behind schedule. All right, no questions.
Well, does that mean that we've done a great job, Joe?
I hope so. All right, well, thank you everybody for your time. This will be online, so if you need to revisit anything that we've said, you can jump on there. Thanks so much all.
Thanks.